There you go. I'll hand over to you, Aunt Tim, and we'll see how we go with the sound and with the choppy talking.
Okay. Hopefully you all can hear me. I'm really excited to be here. I am Tamar Burris. I am a divorce and co-parenting coach. I'm a single mom. And so I've been navigating this world with clients and with myself for several years now. And dating as a parent is tricky. And some of you maybe have already started doing that. Some of you are just getting on board and thinking about doing that. And so yeah, hopefully we can all hear now. And so we're just here to talk about that, to talk about, dating in general, like how to begin that process and what you want to maybe think about and look for as a parent when you're dating. Good. And then also when you have found somebody, bringing that person into the fold and introducing them to your children, sometimes the things to look out for and some of the best ways to try and do that. So that's kind of what I thought about. Great. Good, sound is clear. Bringing to the table here and also answering any questions that you may have at whatever stage of the process that you're in. I want to hear them and let's talk about them. So since there haven't been any questions yet, I figure I'll just begin with talking about dating just in general as a parent. Finding the time is really hard, right? I'm sure you all are incredibly aware of that already. Finding the time, finding the right person to date, whether or not to keep it entirely separate from your children, whether to sort of have them as part of it, keep it loose, it's tricky and it is individual and it kind of depends on the situation that you are in. So generally speaking, the best thing to do is keep dating far away from your kids in the beginning, if you can, as possible, as far away from your kids. Just keep it in your private time. You're not lying to them when you're not talking to them about dating. And that's something that comes up a lot with parents, is that they want to make sure that, or we all want to make sure, we're being honest, we're being forthright, and we are open with our kids. But dating is a world that they don't need to know anything about unless or until these people become serious and you want to bring them around. Now, sometimes when you have teenagers, that's a little bit sticky and they ask more questions. And so it really depends on your relationship with your kids and the age of your children when you start dating as to whether or not you really want to have this be an open book. Sometimes teenagers ask a lot of questions that are okay questions and you want to say, yeah, I am dating, or maybe you want them to help you on a dating app, and that can be kind of fun if they are interested. If they are over your divorce and they're ready for you to date and they're enthusiastic about you dating, sometimes they can help you with that a little bit, and it can be kind of a family thing. Hey mom, hey dad, this person looks great, let's try them. But yeah, it's really entirely dependent on what is happening in your family situation. So finding people to date, apps online is a really great place to start when you're a busy parent. It's a good place to start having conversations, practicing, because that's what dating is it's practicing. You're getting back out there. And you've probably been in a relationship for a long time, and maybe you're out of practice, maybe you're feeling a little nervous. So dating is just about practicing. It doesn't mean that you're going to marry the person that you're going to go for dinner or coffee with. You just want to practice conversation, practice getting to know people, and really finding out what you're looking for in this stage of life, because it's going to be very different than what you were looking for when you got married or when you partnered up in the beginning. And that's something we have to learn about ourselves as we go. I'm going to just keep talking because I don't see any questions. So when you think about what am I looking for, or am I ready? Some people say, don't start dating until you're fully healed. And I would agree that you need to do some healing and some processing from your separation and from your divorce before you really want to get out there dating. But it is okay to stick your toe in a little bit, go out for coffee or see what's out there in the beginning if you'd like to. Just know that if you get yourself involved in a serious relationship right away and you haven't done your work and you haven't done the healing and processing from the relationship you just came from, there's a very good chance that relationship, the second one, is not going to work, because you're going to be pulling the same patterns that you have from your past into this new place. You're going to be just plugging this new person in because you haven't really looked at yourself. You haven't really healed from what you came from. So it is a really good idea to see a therapist or a coach or self-help books or whatever it is. Do some of your own healing and processing before you really truly dive deeply into dating. It'll be helpful for you to find someone that matches with where you are now, and it will be helpful to have an actual relationship that doesn't get based on the dysfunction that you came from. So a lot of people do rush into things and they're excited about it, and if you find someone right off the bat, that happens. But generally speaking, try and do some healing work. Take a little bit of time to be by yourself and to process. Especially us parents, we have kids and we don't want to necessarily throw someone at them right away, right? We don't want to just be like, okay, your mom or dad's gone, like, here's this new person. So when you're dating, take it slow and take that time for your kids to really adjust to you being a separate household. One of the indicators about when it's time to introduce someone to your kids is really looking at your kids and seeing if they're comfortable with your family situation. Because if you introduce someone to your kids really early on and they're not comfortable with the family situation yet, you're going to probably have a lot more problems with them. They're going to be more disinterested in you having this new partner. They're going to lash out, maybe be more reactive. So if you take a pause from dating at all, or just a little bit of gentle dating before you have a real relationship, that's great. And then when you're ready to introduce someone to your kids, take a look at them. Are they used to your situation? Are they used to your routine? Do you have a solid relationship with them on your own? And so does it seem like they are stable enough to introduce somebody? I couldn't see that fully, but I think, did we get a question in there, or a question or two, Tam? I don't want to keep the
Yeah, I don't know if the lag on my bits there are still or not. But one of the questions, I know it was on the app, and Wendy's just said there are quite a few Frolos that are completely solo parents. So they don't have like split time between, you know, like a mum and a dad or a mum and a mum. They just said, have you got any tips for those who kind of feel like they haven't got any free time to date, or how to kind of bridge that when you don't, you know, you don't have a set every other Wednesday, you've not got your kids or whatever?
Yeah, that is really hard. It is really hard. So if you have, depending on your children's ages, if they have sleepovers with friends or play dates somewhere else, or if you have grandparents or anyone involved, even during school hours, if you have some time that you don't have to work necessarily, try and have some of your first dates be casual, quick, coffee, walk, something during the day when your kids might have something else to do. It's a good time to just meet somebody quickly. Otherwise, you know, I do suggest that you keep your kids out of it. However, if you can't, you can't. And you know, if there's someone that you feel comfortable with and they have children, or that you know them in the community a little bit, if you want to meet at a playground or something when your kids are distracted and have it be very, very casual, you know, then that's something that you could do. But it's tricky if it's a first date. You really do want to try and find private time if possible, even if it's brief. And so the dating apps are great because you can at least start a conversation. You can at least at night. So you can at least, you know, maybe at night when your kids are asleep, talk on the phone a little bit and get to know somebody and get to know if you would like to have them around your kids right away or not.
Kind of linked to that, Sarah said she is in her parenting situation. She needs to ask her parents to have her son if she goes out. And again, they kind of want to know where she is, what she's doing. And maybe if you're first dating, you don't really want to tell your parents or your whoever's got your kids, or by the way, I'm going on a first date. So kind of how do you navigate that without, like you said, feeling like you're lying or you're being dishonest, but not wanting to share everything?
It's tricky. Okay, here's the other side of that though. If you look at it from a different perspective, as embarrassing as it seems to be to like share with your parents that you're dating, for your safety, you know, you might want them to know where you are and you might want them to know who you're with. So just throwing that out there, not saying your first date is a serial killer, but I'm just, you know, there's the possibility that you're going to get into a situation and you do want them to know where you are. So think of that when you're embarrassed and you have to tell them. There are times that you have to tell them, or you can just say, I'm meeting a friend. You know, I'm meeting a friend. This is where I'm going. I will be gone for an hour and a half. You don't have to give them details about who you're meeting. You don't, even if they seem like they're prying, you don't have to. That can be your boundary. I'm meeting a friend.
No, that's good. Someone's popped a comment saying, I always say I'm meeting a friend and I'm quite vague. So you're not actually saying, you know, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, you're not lying. You're just omitting details that are unnecessary.
Yeah. Someone sent me a private message just saying, talking like kind of online and virtually is a really good way of kind of like starting that conversation, but they really struggle with the confidence to take it to the next step of actually then going on a date in person, because the conversation can be easier virtually. Do you have any kind of tips or advice for how to then build that confidence so you feel ready to then actually meet that person face to face?
It's really hard. You just have to do it. It's practice. You just have to do it. And one of the things that I would say that might feel counterintuitive is don't text and talk too long before having that meeting. Don't get too super comfortable in that relationship being virtual. Give it maybe 2 weeks and then plan a meeting, because you have to throw yourself into it a little bit.
I think that's good. I liked what you said earlier. It's that thing of remembering that just because you're having coffee with someone doesn't mean you have to marry them, and that's the end of that. And you know what I mean? We kind of pin it all on this is the be all and end all.
Yeah. No, definitely not. And then the other thing to remember is if the first date doesn't work out, that's not necessarily on you. You know, you don't know what's going on in someone else's life. You don't know what they're looking for. You don't know what they're struggling with. You don't know if they've done any of their healing work. So if they ghost you or it doesn't work out, you know, that doesn't mean that you failed, and it doesn't mean that you weren't great. You know, it could be entirely about them, and it's just practice. You have coffee with one person, you have coffee with the next person. By the fourth person, you will feel comfortable having coffee with strangers.
Someone else has said, I kind of linked in, you sort of answered it, but how do you then deal with that ghosting online? So if you continually have people either not reply or you talk to them for a little bit and they don't, how do you deal with that as kind of a knock to your confidence? Because obviously naturally it is going to knock your confidence a little bit.
It is. It does. You have to develop a bit of a thick skin, especially when you're online, because virtually is easy, right? It's easy to just ghost somebody because you don't have any kind of connection and you don't feel any responsibility, or some people don't feel any responsibility. So I feel like if someone ghosts you, just remember that you dodged a bullet, because they clearly don't have great communication skills. It doesn't take that much to say, I'm sorry, this isn't working, or I'm sorry, I don't feel a connection. So if they ghosted you, you don't want them. So just remember that just a little bit. And then, and vice versa, when it's your turn, don't ghost people. Just say something very simply, you seem like a lovely person. I'm sorry, you're not right for me. Something really, really simple. I'm not ready for this, or I'm going in a different direction, anything like that. But yeah, you have to develop a little bit of a thick skin. Now, if you get repeatedly ghosted, and if you have like all sorts of failures on there and you don't have anyone that seems to want to meet, maybe it is time to start taking a look at what you've put on your profile and how you're answering questions and how you're communicating with a person, because it is, there are communication skills that you need to use when you're online. You need to ask questions, you need to be engaging, you need to give information. And if you tend to be more closed, maybe more shy online, then you don't draw somebody else out and they might find it uninteresting. So if you get repeatedly ghosted, I'm not saying that you are a terrible person or that you're not going to be a great date. I'm just saying it might be time to take a look at how you are presenting yourself online.
Another question, I guess, a little bit linked to what you're just saying is, what are your thoughts and what's your opinion on how much you share about whether you're a single parent, the fact that you have a child, kind of how upfront are you with that? And again, dependent on your circumstances, how much do you share about whether you're a co-parent that co-parents really amicably, whether you're someone who actually has a really difficult co-parenting relationship, whether you're a completely solo parent?
Right. For me, I personally say that, be upfront about being a single parent, having children, because that's an important part of your life, right? You immediately want to weed out the people that are not interested in people with children. You don't want to invest any time there. So it's okay to say that you're a single parent. I don't think that you need to provide a lot of information about your family situation right away. I don't think that you really want to spend a lot of time talking with someone new about how difficult your ex is, or anything really about your ex, just maybe a simple sentence or two, how long you've been split, something like that. As you get to know somebody, and you start allowing them to see who you are and you see who they are and you get closer, that's when you share more information. But you don't want to build an initial relationship based on you talking about your former partners.
Someone has kind of raised a question, but also like a really interesting topic around like red flags on dating, and kind of what are the things that you think, this really isn't right for me, where people kind of say, I'm just looking to date, versus someone who's more, I'm looking to date, I'm looking for a long-term relationship, I'm looking to settle down. Any advice on kind of how to navigate what people are looking for and what people mean, I guess?
Mhm. Well, that's where I think it comes into play, where you take some time for yourself and you really look at yourself and do your own healing. Because when you start getting out there, you want to know what it is that you are looking for, so you can weed out those things and you can determine what is a red flag for you. Something that's a red flag for you might not be a red flag for somebody else, or vice versa. So it's hard. You can't ask your friends necessarily because their red flags are different than yours. So you have to know yourself a little bit. You have to know what you're looking for a little bit. Maybe you're just seeing what's out there. You're not looking for anything serious. That's okay. Maybe somebody else is too. But when someone says to you, I'm not looking for anything serious, and you know that you're looking for a second marriage, that person is not the person you want to go on a date with. You weed it out immediately before you get invested. One or two casual conversations online is not going to pull at your heart. Weed them out before you're too invested, before you're too close and it's too hard for you to stop it.
I think that's really good advice, because that's the worst thing, isn't it? Actually, if you figure out you both want completely different things.
Yeah.
I guess, like, on the flip side, obviously the majority of us as single parents will probably go down the online dating first for time reasons above all else. But what about kind of those that maybe are meeting people face to face? They don't want to do online dating. They're actually meeting people at a bar, at a cafe, at a kind of, have you got any advice or questions around advice or kind of around that?
Well, what kind of advice around that?
I guess just like how to start up a conversation if there's someone that you think, oh, maybe I'll try. I mean, again, I'm clutching at, I'm a single parent. I definitely do not have time to go and hang out in a bar and look to see if someone nice comes in. But
Some people do. I think, it's really about courage. It really is about just taking the moment and just seizing it and trying. The more you do it, the more you practice, the easier it will become. The first time you give someone your phone number or you approach someone is nerve-wracking, and it is really humiliating. But by the third or the fourth time, you kind of have a knack for it. And you have to remember, giving someone your number or approaching someone, again, if they reject it or if they're not interested in it, might not have anything to do with you. And you are not invested. Even if it's face to face, you're not invested. So, I don't go sit in a bar and wait for somebody, but I have been at a restaurant or been at a ball game or the gym or something and seen someone who I'm like, hey, they look interesting. And then you just kind of do your best to strike up a conversation and see. We're all pretty good at like looking, do they have a wedding ring on? Are they talking about a partner? Just give it a 5-minute conversation and see. And if it seems that they're single and it seems that they're interested in talking to you, you can say, I'm really interested in talking to you more. And, I'd love to exchange numbers, and just put it out there. And it is really, really scary, but you got to just try it. And you have to know, this is especially, well, I shouldn't say this is especially for the men who feel scared, but both sides. Generally speaking, if you think about, if someone approaches you and they say, hey, you seem really interesting, like I'd like to exchange numbers, even if they're not someone that you are interested in, your reaction is going to be one of flattered. You're flattered that anyone would approach you. You're a parent, you're haggard, you're exhausted, and you're like at the grocery store and someone approached you. Like, that's very flattering, whether you like the person or not. So if you can hold that in your mind when you are approaching someone, maybe it's not the right time for them. Maybe they actually are in a relationship. Maybe it's just for whatever reason, it's not going to line up. But they're still going to be flattered. Almost all of us will be flattered that somebody took the time to notice that you were special.
I love that. I definitely would be flattered, yes.
Yeah.
Someone's popped me a direct message wanting to ask, hang on, sorry, it's just moved. Do you think it's fair to date to find out if you're ready to date? Or is it perceived as an inappropriate thing to do? I guess this person kind of means if you go on like a couple of dates and you go, do you know what, actually, this has made me realize that I don't want to date. Where do we think we stand with that?
I think that's fine. I think that you have to remember that you do not have responsibility for anybody else. This is about you. This is your journey, right? Just because you go out, again, we said you go for coffee doesn't mean you're getting married. You're not signing a contract. You're not saying, because I'm going to meet up with you this one time or 2 times or even 3 times, this means that I am going to dive into a serious relationship with you. You don't owe anybody anything except for yourself. and your family. But yeah, in dating, you don't owe anyone anything. This is for you. This is to see what you want. So if you're curious about dating, but you're not quite sure, yeah, go out on a few dates, and then you can pull back if you feel like you're not quite ready, or maybe it will help you determine what it is that you are ready for. But you don't owe the other person anything but honesty. That's it. So, you meet up with someone and they say, "Oh, I'm here for a relationship. I want, marriage, kids, blah, 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 blah." And you can say, "I'm not sure what I'm looking for. I'm not sure what I'm ready for. This is my first time dating in X number of years." That's all you owe them, is just some honesty about where you're at.
Someone said there's a couple of questions actually all on a similar topic. So around any advice for people thinking of making it official and kind of introducing their children to their new partner that they're dating. Have you got any advice of kind of how best to navigate that situation?
I have tons of advice about that. Yeah, that's my area really. I do a lot of that with kids and families, and I wrote a book, A New Special Friend, about introducing partners to your children, and that's for younger kids, like 3 to 8. But yes, I think that you're going to be most successful if you don't put a lot of pressure on it, right? So I had said earlier that you want to make sure that your kids are in a space where you feel like they're ready, where you feel like they are comfortable with you and your relationship and your home and your routine and everything. You don't want to throw it right away. But so you're at that space, right? And you feel like you're in this space with your relationship. Your relationship feels solid. You really care about this person. It's not just a couple of dates. This is something that you want to make serious, and you want them to be part of your family. And your family is ready for it. So start out casually, start out slowly. Don't force feed your kids this person. This is where it can get really tricky, because you can make a simple introduction at the park, at a group barbecue, at the beach, out on a walk. Don't have the person come to your house the first time. Don't have it be somewhere that's really intimate and special to your kids. Have it be somewhere public. Have it be somewhere where they can be at ease. They can come and go. And they don't have to be like sitting down and a part of this major thing. Have it be simple, have it be quick for the first time. But the other thing is, this is where I think I said that this can get sticky for people, is once you have that very first introduction, oftentimes we're so excited because we are ready. We have this partner. We want them to be part of things. So we introduce them, and then the floodgates open and we just have them there all the time. We just want them to be like part of the life, and that is a dangerous thing, because your kids can get really scared. They can pull back and reject that person if they think that that person is going to be taking over in your family. So you have to remember that you know this person really well. You may be very much in love with them, but your kids don't know them yet. So you have to really go slowly. Take the time to let your kids open up, warm up, and get to know the person. So not a lot of affection in front of your kids right away, those first initial meetings. Really make it about your kids. Focus on your kids. Give your kids more attention than your partner. Have your partner asking your kids questions and getting involved with the kids. It's not about you guys having your special names for each other or holding hands or showing your kids, how much you love one another. This is really introducing a brand new person to your kids. So you have to put your kids front and center and make sure that they feel comfortable.
Thank you. That's really good advice. I think that's, like I said to you before, that's a topic that comes up quite a lot, that people are just not that sure how to navigate.
Yeah.
Someone has then said, next month, this user is doing a speed dating event. Have you got any advice on kind of how to make quick conversation and a good first impression in a situation like that?
I think you smile, you say hello, and you say, "This is the first time I've ever done this." And you just kind of be as animated as you possibly can. It's really quick. So if you think about what's important to you, maybe spend a little bit of time just free writing or brainstorming. What's really important to you? What are you looking for in a date? Think about those characteristics and come up with some questions along those lines. Practice those questions so that when you show up, you're ready to go, and you have a couple of light, funny questions that actually hit some of the things you're targeting for a date.
I love that. I've never done speed dating, but I feel like it sounds really fun, but equally terrifying. Someone said, is love bombing a real thing? So the person you're seeing saying, "I love you," or getting really kind of heavy and serious really, really quickly?
Love bombing is a real thing, and that can happen often. Well, it can happen with anybody. I mean, there's love bombing can happen when someone's a narcissist. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for love bombing, but love bombing can also happen when you are a single parent dating, right? And you haven't healed and you just want to replace that partner, even if it's unconscious. You just want to like remake your nuclear family. So be on the lookout for people who are like that, who are ready to insert you into the family right away, because there are a lot of them. And love bombing happens in that situation often.
Going back to kind of real life situations where you meet people as opposed to virtually, someone said, what's the best way to tell them you're a single parent? How do you do you just blurt it out? Do you kind of, I guess, yeah, how do you kind of articulate that without coming across as really like, hello, I'm a single parent?
Yeah, I mean, you know, some of us are a little more suave and others just aren't, but it's just, I think you have to kind of like weave it into the conversation. It really, again, it's really dependent on the situation and what conversation is happening between you and this person. You know, you're trying to find out if this person's single, right? And you're sort of subtly trying to figure that out. And so saying, oh yeah, connecting or relating about something. Oh yeah, you know, as a single parent, I blah, 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 blah. Or yeah, you know, I have my daughter 5 days a week, and this is what we always come to this park, or just, you know, sort of inserting it as part of the casual conversation and then seeing what comes from the other side, rather than just being, I'm a single parent and I'm here to meet people. But yeah, just kind of subtly have it as part of the, oh, yeah, my daughter and I love to come to the duck pond. She's with her father right now, but you know, something subtle.
Have you got any advice? So you've talked about kind of how if as a single parent we decided to introduce our children to a partner, how do you handle it when it's the other way around? So if your ex-partner has a new partner and maybe they've met someone, how do you kind of navigate that situation? Because obviously that's their business, but equally you want to know that your kids are safe.
Yes. So it's tricky. It really depends on the relationship that you have with your co-parent, right? If there's a lot of tension and conflict, or whether you are able to communicate. In the ideal world, you've been given a heads up that this is happening. And so you're prepared for it. And, you know, not from the kids, but from your ex. And so you're prepared for it. You may even know a little bit about this partner. Maybe you've been able to have some questions answered. But in the real world, that doesn't happen all the time. So you kind of have to take it in stride and hear what you hear from the kids. I think it's most important, and this goes for dating, this goes for everything with your children. It's most important that you keep an open line of communication, right? That you are there for them without creating judgment, so that they know that they can come to you and talk to you about anything. So you have this open style of communication. You want to be really, really neutral. Oh, dad has a girlfriend. Oh, that's nice. Did you like her? Just really neutral. You don't want to pass any judgment about, I can't believe he introduced you to that person already, or you know, anything like that. You don't want to take sides and be judgy. You want to just be open to whatever they have to say. Oh, you went to dinner with dad's friend Robin, or you went to, you know, mom's friend Mark took you to the ball game. That's cool. Does he like baseball? And just keep it really even, and allow them to share what they'd like to share. In terms of keeping them safe, it's really hard. It's true that our children are more exposed to more people, and there are statistics that show that children from, you know, two family homes, or I guess divorced families, have a higher rate of possible abuse because they are exposed to people that we don't have as much control over. And so that can be a really tricky thing. You want to, but it's like anything. It's like looking for signs with a teacher or anyone that they're with. You want to look for any red flags in your kids. You want to look for behavioral changes. You want to look for if they all of a sudden are afraid or upset about going to the other parent's house. You want to look for changes in their grades, or any kind of changes in their look, in their dress, in their moods. Those are all possible red flags after someone's been introduced that this person is no good. But generally speaking, most people are going to be helpful, positive influences in your kids' lives. That's the hope. So you keep that channel of communication open. You let your kids know they can come to you with anything. They can talk to you about anything going on with their dad, their mom, you know, this other person. And if they do come to you with something that seems a little bit odd, or you're unsure about whether, you know, not something that's like super abusive, like they hit me or something, but if they come to you and they say, they're so mad at Barbara because Barbara didn't let them, X, Y, and Z, you can bring it up with your ex, but you have to be really careful about how you do so. You don't want to accuse their new partner of being a terrible person. You just want to say, hey, Dan told me this thing that sounded kind of funny. It came from a kid's mouth, but he told me that this happened. And then you wait for them to share back what, their side of the story is. You don't want to accuse them, but yeah, you don't have any control over the other side. You just don't. So you just want to make sure that your kids feel comfortable with that person and that they feel comfortable talking to you about that person if anything comes up.
I guess kind of linked to that as well, someone has said, do you have any right to say that you want your ex-partner to wait? So say if your co-parent says, actually this weekend I'm going to introduce you to Sally, or introduce the kids to Sally, do you have any kind of right to go, okay, I'm not comfortable with that? And I guess vice versa, if you were going to introduce your children to your partner and your co-parent said, oh, actually I think it's a bit too soon, how do you handle that situation?
You don't have any right. You can ask, but you don't actually have a right to that. As we know, we've all faced all sorts of things with our co-parents, right? You don't have any control over the other side. You just don't. If it's not written into your parenting plan, and some people do choose to write things like that into the parenting plan. We are both going to wait 6 months, whatever. And then you can remind them that that's in your parenting plan. Hey, this has only been 3 months and we have this written down. This is our deal. But you can't force them not to. So you have to accept it if that's what's happening. You can gently remind them that that's not what you had agreed to. You can ask them, hey, take a look at our kids. I don't think they're quite ready to meet somebody. How would you feel about holding off a month or so? Make sure it's a question. It's not a demand. It's a request. And you have to be ready for the answer to be no.
Another question, and again, this could be any type of single parent, but I guess particularly if you are a solo parent, so just your parent and your child or your children, how do you handle jealousy from your child if it's been just the two of you for a couple of years, you're now dating? How do you reassure them that they're still your priority?
That can be really hard. That particularly happens a lot with moms. It just does. I think because moms are generally the primary caretaker and their kids get really, really attached, especially, and this is also a generalization, but especially boys with their moms. But that's what I see, but it can happen with anybody. And it is tough. You have to remember that, okay, while I've said, don't introduce somebody until your kids are comfortable with your situation like that, there's a caveat to that, which is you are the adult, you are the parent, you are in charge. So your kids cannot rule everything, right? So while you want to ask for their input, while you want to look to make sure that they're comfortable and secure in their life, they also cannot dictate whether you are dating or whether you have a life outside of them. So you have to be firm in that with them. They have to know that they don't get to decide whether this, again, here's another caveat, as long as this person is safe, right? As long as this person is not actually doing anything harmful with your children or in some sort of abusive situation. So as long as this person is safe and kind and you are happy with them and they are displaying no no attitudes or behaviors that seem red flaggy with your children, then you get to choose whether this person is going to be somebody that you date. Your children do not get to choose that. You can pull back a little bit and maybe spend less time with them around your kids for the sake of your relationship as well, because it is hard to have someone all the time and be fighting with the kids or have jealousy all the time. So you might want to try and carve out more private time if possible, and have it not be with the kids all the time. But your kids, you just have to hold them, tell them you love them, and that you also love this other person, and that your love for this other person does not change the way that you love them. You will always love them. They will always come first, but this person is a part of your life as well. And you have to just keep kind of plugging along and trying to find perhaps activities that they can share or interests that they have that are combined, but don't put a lot of pressure on that. That's something like that's in your head. You're not telling the kid, hey, you both like baseball, we're going to all go to a baseball game. You have to just come up with these ideas and think about it. We're all going to a baseball game. Whether your new partner and your child interact at that game is, you can't have expectations about that, but hopefully by the third or the fourth game, maybe they will interact a little bit. You have to take the wins as they come, and they can be small, but you absolutely cannot let your children fully dictate the life.
I guess a little bit linked to that, what do you do and how do you handle a situation if you introduce your children or your child and they say, actually, I don't like Bob, I just don't like him, I don't want to see him anymore? How do you deal with that circumstance?
Right. Well, it's age dependent. So why are they saying they don't like Bob? How old are they? Are they having a tantrum? Are they a teenager? Teenagers don't like anybody. So that's kind of like, all right, great. Do you not like them as much as you don't like me? Or like, where are we at with that? But yeah, I think, it's really age dependent and it's really a personal situation. So if they say they don't like this person, you can sit down with them and ask them, like, why don't you like them? Can you help me understand what you don't like about them, or what part is making you uncomfortable? What do you suggest we do here? Bob is a part of my life and I really care about him. How can we make this a little bit more comfortable for you? And you can help them be a part of your situation, as long as you're still remaining in that firm space of reminding them that Bob is a part of your life. And so now we're going to work with having Bob in our life and how we can make that more comfortable for everybody. And again, it might involve you trying to pull back and having some more private time with Bob, and slowing down the introductory process.
I've had another direct message. So what's your view on single parents dating other single parents, and whether logistically that is really great because they understand, but really hard because then you're bringing two kind of single parent logistics together, versus dating someone who isn't a parent and has no experience of that?
All of that is true. It is great because you both understand and you both have children that are the priority. It is horrible and awful because where do you have the time, and how do you put this together, and what if your kids don't get along? So all of that can be happening all at once. And I think it's, again, individual. If you meet somebody who is not a parent, but they're wonderful and they slide into your family, that's great. If you meet somebody who is a parent and they're wonderful and, you got to work it out, that's great. But yeah, there's pros and cons for both, right? Someone who doesn't have kids is probably, their schedule is freer. They're gonna have an easier time seeing you on your schedule. Perhaps they want children and they're excited to be a part of your life with your children, and they don't have another ex that they have to worry about, co-parenting situation, all of that they have to worry about schedule. So it's convenient and it can be wonderful. On the other hand, someone who doesn't have kids sometimes really doesn't understand the importance of putting your kids first. And sometimes you have to break plans because someone's sick or someone's having an emotional breakdown or whatever it is, and they can sometimes take things personally that someone who is another single parent wouldn't. They'd be like, oh yeah, I hear that. Like I went through that last week. But so sometimes you can spend you can drain yourself emotionally with someone who doesn't have kids, trying to explain to them that yes, they are important. Yes, you want to see them, but you have these millions of things going on with your kids right now. And so this has to be a priority this week. So it's there's pros and cons. There's drawbacks to everything and there's positives to both sides. It just really depends on the relationship that you're developing yourself with whoever that is.
Someone's asked, is it a red flag if someone wants to exchange numbers straight away? So I guess if you've met on a dating platform, when do you then go from talking on that platform to then talking on your personal numbers to then, and keep moving through those stages?
Not necessarily. I mean, like I've said, I don't think that you should be talking virtually for too long without trying to create some sort of a personal in-person situation. Otherwise it draws out too long. You could be getting catfished. I mean, who knows what's happening? And you might also just lose the oomph or the steam, to like meet that person. So I think that there's people like me who are coaching people. And so maybe this person is just a little bit nervous and they're like, okay, we need to exchange numbers. Who knows? But if you sense that there's a red flag, you really have to trust your own intuition a little bit here too. If you feel like it's too early, maybe you just said, hi, how are you? And they're like, give me your number. If you feel like they've said something weird or it's too early or you're just not ready to do it, then that's a red flag for you. And you have to honor
that. Someone's asked, going back to kind of introducing your partner to your children, should you introduce them as like, this is mummy's friend or this is daddy's friend, or should you be really clear that this is mummy's boyfriend or girlfriend?
Yeah. Well, like my book is a new special friend, and that's the term that we started with my son. He was 4. So this is my new special friend. He didn't quite understand girlfriend. Like, he also thinks like you're just going to get married if you kiss. So it was, a special friend. This is someone I feel very special about. They are a friend, but they're a very, very close friend. And it kind of like, we went from there, and he used that term for a long time. I think it depends on the ages of your children. And I think it depends on how comfortable you are talking about that kind of thing with them. With teenagers, you're like, you're not gonna be like, this is my special friend. And they're like, yeah, all right, dad, mom, like, we know what this is. But with a 5 or 6-year-old, saying someone's your close friend, your dear friend, or someone that you're getting to know better is okay. Because I personally believe if you start with the terms, boyfriend, girlfriend, there's going to be a lot more questions from a young kid that you can't necessarily answer right away.
Have you got any thoughts around if you're using a dating app in terms of your pictures? Should you have pictures that with your children in that show you're a single parent? Should you just have pictures of yourself? What's the best way to navigate that?
Well, I personally don't like to put pictures of my child online. I just don't. That's my thing. So I have photos of him from behind, or a hand or something, but I don't put pictures of his face. And that's just my rule. And that's my ex and I both believe in that for us. So that's a comfort thing, and that's a safety thing, in my opinion. I wouldn't necessarily put frontal photos of my children on a dating site, but that's me. Family photos are fine. You're saying you're a single parent. You can show yourself in action as a single parent. I don't believe that people necessarily need to see what your kids look like to know that you're a single parent. But yeah, again, that's a personal thing. I just find like with the safety things about kids, I don't like to post them online.
We talked about like how you introduce the fact that you're dating or your new partner to your children. When should you introduce them to your ex-partner if you are in a co-parenting situation?
Yeah. Well, that's also, again, depends on the situation that you have. If you have a really amicable situation, it's nice to give them a heads up that you are going to be introducing this person. You don't necessarily have to introduce them to the person first, but you want them to know that this person is going to be meeting your kids, if possible. If you have a really high conflict situation, or you're just like parallel parenting and you don't interact, that's not something you necessarily have to do. And with that, you don't necessarily ever have to introduce your partner to your former partner. You don't have to introduce them to your ex. There's no set rule that says you have to. I think you have to take a look at what you would like to happen for yourself, because if you're not going to do it, then they're not going to do it, right? So if you want to make sure that you're going to meet your ex's partners, then you have to choose to introduce your partner to your ex. And you have to just really be cautious and careful about the relationship that you have with your ex. If you have a really high conflict ex that you're trying to stay away from, you might not want to have those interactions. If you have someone that you're really amicable with, it could be written into your parenting plan. That is something else, like people say, like we have to have a sit down. For me personally, when my ex moved in with somebody, I wanted to sit down and have a conversation when they were moving in. Before that, I didn't necessarily need to know her very well, but I did want her to know me a little bit when she was going to live there, and us to have a little conversation just about what parenting should look like, what parenting does look like. And that went really, really well, but that worked for my situation. So it's hard to answer some of these questions because it really is personal. It really does depend on your own co-parenting situation. And that's something that I try and like make really known to everyone, is there's not one right way to do everything. There's not one perfect way to co-parent. You're not failing if you choose to do it this way, and you're not succeeding if you choose to do it that way. You have to do it the way that is the most comfortable for you and your family, and what keeps you guys at the most peace, and moving along.
Someone said, how about if you're dating someone, you both have children, and you're at the point where you're introducing your children to each other's children, and they don't get along, or they don't, they're arguing, they don't like each other, they don't want to be around each other. How do you kind of deal with that circumstance? Because that's quite difficult, I imagine.
really hard. I think that you pull back a little bit on making them, you don't want to force them to hang out all the time. You pull back a little bit, you have their meetings be in situations where everyone can do something that's fun. You're going to take them to the fair, you're going to take them to the beach, you're going to take them, you know, to the park, allow them to have friends with them. Again, it's kind of like introducing a partner to your family, where you can't have huge expectations of everyone really getting along, and you can't force them to be friends. You just are having everyone in the same environment and allowing them to hopefully connect with each other wherever they want to. So you have to take the pressure off a little bit. It's really hard if you want to try and force it and have everyone come together all the time. You can't yell at them and make them be friends. There's just no way to force someone to get along. So yeah, my advice is generally to have larger group experiences where people can pick and choose. If you're at the beach, they can go in the water, they can play in the sand, they can nap, they can do whatever it is they're doing while you're all together, and they can have more positive experiences without being thrown together in a tight expectation, and to do it less frequently until everyone's comfortable.
Going right back to kind of the beginning of dating, someone has said, what would be kind of the key questions you would ask when you're first chatting to someone and trying to meet someone? So I guess if you're brand new to this, this is your first time trying to kind of have a go at dating again, any advice you've got around kind of those first interactions and getting to know someone?
Yeah, well, I think that again goes back to, what are you looking for? So if you have a clear idea of what you're looking for, if you just want to be honest about the fact that you don't have any idea what you're looking for, I think some of the questions are to shoot back to the person of like, what are you looking for? Why are you here? What brought you to online dating? What's your experience with online dating been? Because you want to know, have they been burned this whole time? Have they been on here for 3 years, or are they brand new here? What are your expectations from dating? I think it's just gentle, easy questions around like who they are looking for, what they are looking for, and what their expectations are with the online dating. And then as you talk, because in those first couple of questions, you can figure out pretty quickly if someone's definitely not for you, right? You can say like, how long have you been online dating, and what's your experience been like, and what are you looking for? And they can say, I've been here for 5 years and everyone here sucks, and I'm looking for the perfect 1950s housewife. And you're like, okay, gone, done. And then you don't even have to get into anything about being a single parent or anything else about your life. So I would ask the dating questions first. And if they get rid of you really right away when they ask you back, what are your expectations? And you say, like, I don't know, I've just started dating again, and they get rid of you. Well, then you know that they're just in a different place than you are. And that's fine. But you get it out of the way before you even have to bother the small talk and getting to know one another.
I think that's definitely really good advice. Someone has said kind of around what do you do? So you've spoken about like if your co-parent, your ex-partner, and your co-parent is dating, you don't kind of pass judgment on their partner, you try and be really neutral. And you ask your child questions. What do you do if that's not reciprocated? So if you're dating someone and your co-parent is telling your children, oh, mummy's new partner's horrible, he's this, he's that, how do you handle that situation with your kids so it's not passed on to your kids?
Yeah, that is really hard. And that can happen even when they're talking about you, right? I mean, someone who's talking about your partner that way is generally also going to be talking about you that way. And so it's going to be the same advice that I would give you if your former partner was talking about you. And it's just basically rise above it. Try and not let it bother you. Don't take the bait. You don't want to get into an argument of with your children in the center about how great your new partner is, with your ex who doesn't even know your new partner. Kind of laugh off what you can and let your kids see that it's not bothering you. You know that you are introducing this person to your kids. And if your kids like them, then that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what the other, what your former partner says about them. And if your kids are confused by that kind of commentary from mom or dad, you can say, well, what do you think? You've met Bob. Do you think that Bob is, boring and has bad breath and is, a total douchebag or whatever you want to call him, like whatever mom or dad has said, like, do you think that? Like, what's your opinion of him? What have you noticed about him? And just help your kids understand that they can have their own opinion and it doesn't matter necessarily what the other person is saying. And that's going to be something important for them to learn anyway, because is if your ex sinks to that level, then they're going to sink to that level over a lot of things, over the lot of your children's lives, and they need to know how to handle it. They need to know that they can have their own opinions, that what is said by mom or dad isn't necessarily always accurate, and they can think for themselves. So you just have to kind of guide them in that way without getting angry and without taking, being on the defense all the time.
Someone has said, once you've kind of your children have met your new partner and you're kind of the relationship's progressing, how do you handle sleepovers with your new partner if you've got your kids in your house? Because again, to begin with, if you're a co-parent, you might do that when you don't have your kids with you, but if you're a completely solo parent and you've always got your kids with you, how do you navigate that?
Tricky. That is really tricky. And again, so that becomes personal, because if you're a single parent and you just don't have the space and time, it's very likely that your relationship will move faster. It just will, because you just don't have the options. And that's okay. So I don't want anyone here, if you're a single parent and you don't have, the space, I don't want you to feel bad about yourself, like you're doing it wrong if you move a relationship along quickly. I understand, we all have to do what we have to do. So that being said, if you have the space and you have the luxury of a co-parent or grandparents, or your kids are old enough for sleepovers or whatever, that's when you want to have your sleepovers, your adult sleepovers, for as long as you can. I mean, it depends on the kids' ages. It depends on your relationship with your children. It depends on what precedent you want to set for them about them having boyfriends and girlfriends sleeping in your house, and what kinds of things you want to bring up about sex with them. Because if you are not ready to get married or have a live-in partner, then you're going to have a lot of questions from your kids when you talk about sleepovers, and that's okay. But you have to just know that those questions are coming. Well, why can you have a sleepover with Bob? You're not married. You're not even planning on living together. Why can't I have a sleepover with Christy? It's the same thing. So you're going to have a lot more, you're saying, you're going to have a lot more of those questions the sooner you bring someone in for sleeping over. Now, that being said, if you have young kids are really pliable, right? And they don't know, they don't even know necessarily what is like right or wrong or whatever. So if you have younger children and they really like your partner, and you're a single parent and you don't have the space and time, and you have your new partner starting to sleep over, they'll probably just accept that that's the way that it is. And that's okay. That's okay. You just want to be mindful of where your kids are, and make sure that your home is a comfortable place for them. If they're preteen and they're uncomfortable with having a man or a woman in the home, then you have to try and respect that as well.
And then I guess, obviously, we hope that the relationship we're going to get into is going to be lovely and we're going to be really happy. But what happens if you've introduced your kids, they've gotten to know, and then actually it doesn't work out, as relationships don't? How do you then have that conversation, and how honest are you with your kids?
Right.
That
yeah, I think it's kind of like the divorce conversation that you probably had, unless you've just been a single parent all the way through, and then yay, this is your first time to have to do this. So if you've been, I guess, lucky enough to have had the divorce conversations, then your kids have already heard it, and this person is not going to be nearly as much of an impact as their mom or dad splitting from you was. So you have to know that the impact will be less. They will get over it. And it's just the same kind of conversation of, when we love our children forever, that's unconditional. It never changes. The love between a parent and a child is always and forever. But when you're an adult, or when you get into friendships with, the opposite sex or same sex, whatever, when you get into these kinds of close relationships with boyfriends and girlfriends, It's all about choosing who you'd like to spend your time with as an adult. And sometimes when you get to know somebody really well, you find that they're not actually a person that you really want to spend that much time with. And I need to, devote my time to our family right now. And so this person's no longer going to be around. You can leave them room for them to feel sad. You can have them say goodbye. You can have them write letters, whatever it is, depending on, how close they got to this person. But if you have been divorced or separated and their other parent is in their life, there is a high likelihood that this breakup is not going to be nearly as impactful for them. So you have to remember that and feel less guilty.
Amazing. I think that is all of the questions that I've had so far. It was amazing. So thank you so much for all of your advice and your thoughts. It was brilliant. And thank you everyone for sending in so many questions and having loads, because it's great, because then we've been able to go through them and answer them. So yeah, amazing.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate you spending your time here with me. And it's been really a lot of fun. And if you find me through my website or on Instagram or something, you can always ask questions and I'm happy to answer things.
Do you want to just talk through your Instagram handle, your website and that, and then people know where to find you?
Sure. Everything is very simple because it's all my name. My website is just Tamar Burris, TamarBurris.com. And it's my name, Tamar Burris, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and I think on Twitter, which I don't use very much, I think it's Coach Tamar. And then my book, A New Special Friend, you can find on Amazon. You can find in any bookstore if you ask for it. Yeah, so if you just look up my name, you're sure to find me.